Measure pleasure. Get out your lab notebook, sit comfortably, and notice if you're holding any tension in your body. Maybe you're like me and you tend to hold a ton of tension in your neck, in your shoulders, also your back. Just pick your own favorite location here. And if you notice any tension, give yourself permission to stretch and hold these areas of your body. Just noticing what intentionally introducing just a little bit of tension in those muscles feels like. Maybe holding the tension for a few seconds and then just letting go of that tension completely, allowing gravity to settle those muscles back to a natural and relaxed state. And then take a couple of deep, relaxing breaths. All right. So, in this experiment, we'll explore a relatively simple but extremely powerful method that has consistently shown strong scientific evidence for helping people decrease their symptoms of depression, social anxiety, generalized anxiety, eating disorders, post traumatic stress disorder, to reduce substance use and prevent relapse, to lose weight and to maintain this weight loss, to sleep better by reducing symptoms of chronic insomnia and recurring nightmares. And there's a whole lot more. So, what is this method? In psychological research and treatment, it's often referred to as daily monitoring or daily diary or daily report methods. And depending on the context, this could involve daily tracking of certain behaviors, thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, maybe the practice of specific skills, and observations about various patterns of behavior to help people accomplish their treatment goals. And today, we'll use this method of daily monitoring to increase the likelihood that we'll accomplish our values based SMART goal that we came up with during our previous Closing the Gaps experiment. So, by using daily monitoring, the hypothesis here is that this will help us track our progress over time. Also, to increase our awareness of certain patterns that are tending to move us towards or away from our values and our values based SMART goal, to increase our motivation and our sense of accountability so we can continue our progress each day, and also to increase those pleasurable feelings, of happiness, satisfaction, and well being as we see our hard work pay off day after day. To begin, let's go ahead and create a daily tracking sheet so we can track our progress each day. And for this experiment, we'll use a really simple table format for daily monitoring, which is really standard across a lot of evidence based psychological treatments. And I'll go ahead and describe how we'll actually draw this out on a paper lab notebook. But, if you choose another method like an electronic spreadsheet or maybe a tracking app that you have on your phone, anything else that's going to be, useful for you. The point here really is to come up with a method that's going to work best for you and the values based SMART goal that you want to accomplish. So go ahead and feel free to adapt and modify all of this as we continue the experiment. So the simple table we'll create today will have 8 different headings that'll go across the page from left to right. This will give us 8 columns. And we'll start with only tracking your one values based SMART goal from our previous experiment, which will give us one row below the initial headings row, which will give us a total of 2 rows. So when you're done with this experiment, you'll have a bright and shiny new 8 column by 2 row table to help you monitor your progress as you're living this more authentic, values based life. And, if you have other values based SMART goals that you came up with that you're currently working on, feel free to add those to your table for daily monitoring, adding new rows as you move down the page. Okay, so on the very left hand side of your page, go ahead and write the first heading that we can title Values Based SMART Goal. And when you're done, you can put a vertical line to the right of this heading to make it more of a visual column on your table. And pausing the experiment if you need some more time. Okay, so for your second heading, that'll go to the right of your first heading of values based SMART goal. Write either Monday or an abbreviation of Monday, something like MON. Once again, putting a vertical line to the right of this second heading to make it another visual column on your table. All right. And for your third heading, write either Tuesday or an abbreviation of Tuesday like TUES. And once again, putting a vertical line to the right of this third heading when you're done to make it another visual column on your table. And then we're going to repeat this process across the page for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, with Sunday being the eighth and the final column on this first heading row. And it can be particularly helpful if you take the time to actually write out the specific date for those days of this current week. So you can more easily review your progress over time, day after day, and week after week if needed. So go ahead and take all the time you need here and just pause the experiment now until you've finished writing out these 8 headings. And so now that you have your first headings row, go ahead and draw a horizontal line across the page from left to right underneath your headers to separate that first row from the second row underneath. And once you've done that, underneath the first heading that you have of values based SMART goal, please write the values based SMART goal that you came up with during our previous Closing the Gaps with SMART Goals experiment. Take some time to flip back to that experiment to review your values based SMART goal, and then rewrite that out on your daily monitoring table underneath the heading of values based SMART goal. Pausing the audio now until you're finished. Okay, so at this point, you need to decide what information you're going to monitor each day to gauge your progress. And this is going to depend on your specific values based SMART goal. So, using my own example from the Closing the Gaps experiment of spending at least 10 minutes of one on one time with each of our 4 children at least 3 times per week. So, under each day of the week, I chose to track how many minutes I spent with each child on that particular day and also what activity we did together. So on my table, I wrote out one row for each of our 4 children so I can visually see how many minutes of one on one time I spent with each of them over a full 7-day week. So by tracking the minutes, I can see if I'm hitting my 10 minutes per day goal. And by visually seeing how many days each week I spent with each kiddo, this lets me see if I'm spending at least 3 out of the 7 days doing this with each of our children. And also by making a quick note of what activity we were up to, I really found that this increased my motivation to continue working on this values based SMART goal each day, as this really brought up a lot of great memories for me. So, spending alone time pushing our 2-year old on the swings, spending alone time with our 6-year old planting seeds to grow watermelons and tomatoes and onions and basil, So these are all, memories that I'm pretty certain I'd forget if I didn't include making note of these activities on my tracking log a priority, which can highlight the power of, making sure that we personalize the information that we're tracking each day. So, if your values based SMART goals focused on the value of health, and maybe you decided to limit your daily alcohol intake to a maximum of 1 glass of wine on weekdays and 2 glasses of wine on weekend days, then you'd be tracking glasses of wine each day and possibly any additional information you feel would be helpful. So, for example, maybe any emotions you experience on days you drink more or less, and maybe how you felt the next morning. So let's say you focused on the value of honesty and your values based SMART goal was to be more truthful in conversations with your romantic partner, by not intentionally misleading them with statements that you don't believe to be true. So in that case, you might be tracking the number of lies that you told your romantic partner each day, or maybe making note of specific conversations you had that you felt were particularly truthful, meaningful, and how this might be deepening your relationship over time. So, based on your specific values based SMART goal, take a few moments to decide how you're going to track your progress each day and possibly writing these details down next to your table in your lab notebook as a reminder, and then pause the audio until you're finished. Okay. And finally, here, we're going to set ourselves up for success by deciding how we're going to remind ourselves to track our progress each day. So, from personal experience here, it can be really easy to forget to track our progress on this daily monitoring form each day. So, it's often really helpful to choose a specific time each day that you'll fill out your monitoring form so you can more easily establish this daily habit. If you tend to carry your lab notebook with you during the day, or if you have your monitoring form in an electronic format, you can fill it out immediately after you start making progress on your goal for that day. And that can be really reinforcing. It feels nice to check these off of our list in real time. But if you don't have your monitoring form handy when you're making progress in the moment, maybe filling out the form first thing in the morning can be helpful as you reflect on what you were up to the previous day. Or you can also decide to fill out your monitoring form at the very end of the day when you have some time to yourself. So, if you choose this, you might want to do it a few hours before you normally get into bed for sleep, as this kind of daily monitoring, it can be really activating cognitively, and it can even bring up some of those evaluative judgments from Judge E about what you were up to on that particular day. And all of this can interfere with our sleep. So go ahead and take a few moments to think about when you can commit to tracking your progress each day. And you can either write this in your lab notebook or possibly set a reminder on your phone or electronic calendar, whatever's going to be most useful for you to establish this daily routine. And then pausing the audio until you're finished. And now, as we bring this experiment to an end and you start tracking your progress on your values based SMART goal each day, you may start to become aware of certain patterns that emerge from your ongoing efforts. Are there specific challenges or obstacles that regularly come up and get in the way of you meeting your values based SMART goals each day? And if so, be sure to make note of these patterns, as these insights can be incredibly helpful for making adjustments and setting yourself up for continuing to make progress moving forward.